right, Brooke, good morning. How's it going?
Conrad, how are you? I just got back from I was in Nashville. I took my 81-year-old mother. One of her bucket list items of things to do was to go to Nashville. She's never been. She's been upset with my father. They've driven by there before and he's never stopped. So she explained this to my brother and I. So we said, you know what, for mom's birthday, her 81st birthday, we're going to take her to Nashville. So we hit all the honky tonks. We hit all the singer songwriter music festivals and concerts, and just she had an absolute blast. She was actually dancing at Kid Rocks, so I got some great video. I cannot wait to share that. So it was awesome. Such a cool trip.
Kindred
That's
spirit.
Yes.
Yeah, I like that. We should all strive to be Brooke's mom, 81, and going to whatever our favorite music is and dancing. I like that. That's a good combination of things.
I never thought I was going to get her to Kid Rocks. I thought I was just going to take her to the other, honky tonks. But we got her out there on the dance floor. So
What's the expression? In for an inch, in for a mile, right? Like you're already there. You may as well kind of go all out at that point. What's the harm at that point? I like that.
It was a blast.
Well, you go way back with your mom, Brooke, one might imagine. And I think you go way back with our guests today. So Lance and Elaine, I'm happy to have you guys on here. Brooke, maybe you told a little bit of the origin story before we hit record. What's kind of the background of how you first met Lance originally?
Yeah.
Quite some time ago.
No, we definitely go way back, great friends, and just super excited to have him on the podcast here. So so I, many of you know, I founded a company called Vantage Resort Realty in 2007. Grew that for about 5 years, sold it, sold my equity in that company. Ended up, going down to Orlando, kind of leading business development there. But in my shoes came Lance, and Lance filled in, and he did a much better job than I ever did. So he definitely filled in, and that was, we ended up meeting, chatting at conferences and things like that, and commiserating together and talking about the market in Ocean City. And that's how we met.
Absolutely. Trial by fire. I learned a lot. Brooke handed me the playbook in 2013, and by the end of 2015, Elaine and I were building Seaside Vacations.
Yeah. Well, you alluded to that actually, Lance, before we hit record. You were saying that basically Vintory is not, what's the actual founding year, Brooke? 2020 or 2019 or something like that? It's actually 2008. Is that accurate, Lance? Because you said basically the system was.
Brooke began developing the system in 2007, 2008, at least to the best of my knowledge, and he may have been using it in his mortgage banking career before that. I don't know. But so this thing has been refined over, we're going on with, I don't know, what's that, 15, 16, 17 years. So it's evolved a lot, but it's a system that 100% works. It gave us a big jump in our success because we had this system in place before Vintory was born. This is how we were growing our business in Chincoteague and Ocean City.
Mm-hmm. Right on. Awesome. Well, the premise of today's episode is that we're going to go through the top 10 mistakes. Now, the listener who's already had a few episodes may go, how are you going to do a top 20 mistakes? Because both Lance and Elaine both contributed to the book. So Brooke came up with a good idea. We kind of combined them and we categorized them a little bit. So what I'll try to do today is kind of note in the book, like, hey, this is Lance number 5, this is Elaine number 1, but they do touch on some of the same topics. And then there's some that are specific to Lance, some that are specific to Elaine. So I'll try to distribute things equally. That's kind of our plan for the listener, to get through everything today in a time efficient manner. Otherwise we'll be for 2 hours. I don't know if they want a 2-hour one. Maybe they do. If you want a 2-hour one, then email Brooke and we'll make that happen. But let's dive right in if you guys are okay with it. Elaine, perhaps I'll go your direction first. So this is specifically about hiring. Obviously, people are like one of the most foundational, important things in the vacation rental business. So your very first one, Elaine, was number 1, not listening to my gut when hiring, and hiring for experience and skills rather than culture. You give some examples here, right? 9 times out of 10, your gut doesn't let you down. What's kind of been your learning process of hiring people? How have you made hopefully more of the right calls and learned from some of the bad calls you've made with people?
Gosh, yeah. I find in this business, everything ultimately comes back to listening to your gut, whether it's homeowners or properties and hiring especially. We waited a little too long to hire. And what we've learned over the years is that at first we were looking for people who had particular skills, a background in hospitality, a background in hotel or vacation rentals. And over the years, we learned that it's far more important to find someone who fits your culture, someone who meshes with your people, believes in your purpose, and you can train them to do the rest of the job. So that's my gut on the hiring side of things. Now, on the firing side of things, when you start to get that feeling that it's just not working, it's not a good fit, the skills aren't there, they don't fit the culture, just trying to make it work, kind of force a square peg in a round hole and not letting them go. You're wasting your time, you're wasting your money, and you're wasting their time as well. So just kind of rip that Band-Aid off after you've given someone a fair shot. If you know it's not going to work, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
I love
The
that.
Go ahead, Brooke. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. No, I just love that. I love first off, the gut, sticking with your gut. It reminds me of, there's a quote, and also just the fact that when I first started Vintory, we only wanted people to have vacational experience. And I think it was good to have that. We did that initially, but then finally I realized, they don't have to have vacational experience, and it reminds me of a quote from Sam Altman. It's like, hire for values first, aptitude second, and specific skills third. And then we've shifted more towards that, and I think it's made all the difference in the world. It kind of aligns with what you're talking about there, Elaine.
Absolutely. And I think, there's been such a focus on culture in our industry over the last couple of years. I'm sure you'll agree. We've all learned that really there's nothing more important. And the keynote at the conference just a few days ago, it was all about that. And, happy employees lead to happy guests, lead to better business, more owners, more money for everyone, more happiness for everyone. So it's so incredibly important to get that right.
Mm-hmm. One thing you mentioned, so for Lance, number 5 was kind of on your list with respect to hiring. One word that was in your mistake that I didn't hear Elaine say just now, I'm curious if you want to expand on it, Lance, was delegation. Maybe Elaine alluded to it with respect to not hiring soon enough, but how have you learned to hire now, and how do you delegate tasks to people that you can then trust?
Yeah, we're still working on that one, quite honestly, but we're getting better at it. But so, we created this and it was our baby, and it's been really, really hard to let go of control.
Still is sometimes.
And it still is sometimes.
Yeah.
So, but you bring these people on board, and you've got to learn to trust them and give the work to them to free up bandwidth to go tackle other projects. And people respond well to you trusting them. And it's just something that, as leaders, we've had to learn to trust our people, to give them the power and the authority to go and tackle a project and just report back to us.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, let's kind of go in a related direction. So the second topic that we kind of pulled out from both mistake lists was HR. So Lance, this was your 8th one, not establishing an HR protocol soon enough. Once, you and Elaine scaled the properties up to 75, there was very little help, very efficient, which is a good thing, but you should have then started to do the groundwork for HR. So what kind of does the HR function mean to you as it relates to hiring, our last little conversation, and what HR functions have you put in place now in the business?
HR is kind of really the one place where you really have to have structure and guidelines and rules.
It took me years to convince him of that, by the way. He says it now. He didn't used to say it.
And the people who are big on cultural index and predictive index and that kind of thing, none of that suits my personality. And obviously, I'm not very good at it. And Brooke's been down this road himself, I'm sure, and understands that he and I are not going to be good at HR type tasks because they're very structured and very repetitive and require extreme attention to detail. And all of those things are not in my wheelhouse.
For years, I was HR essentially with the help of Sue Jones. If you're out there and you don't have a good HR program, definitely talk to Sue, as well as Steve Trover and some other of our great friends. But when it was the two of us and one employee, it was very easy to be flexible and just go ahead and do that. And I actually kept track of things in Google Docs. And as you grow, and the next thing you know, you have 20 employees. I'm a firm believer in only do for one what you can do for all. And you have to have set policies, and you have to have things in writing, and you need to have your employee handbook. Do it early on. It's much easier to do it early on than it is to backtrack.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons why you all have been so successful is just you all balance. It sounds like you all balance each other so well.
Very much. We always say,
together we Go ahead, Seth.
Together we make one mostly normal human being.
But at the core of that HR issue for us is part of its geography. We have people that live in 3 different states. So we have to follow HR guidelines and tax regulations and whatnot for Maryland, Virginia, and Delaware. So there's to be technically correct, there's a lot of detail that goes into it. And last year we had 139 W-2s, and there's there's a lot of risk
Mhm.
and liability if you don't do it right.
And the different labor laws between the different states. Our second employee is going to have a baby this year. I mean, there's a whole lot of things you need to be prepared for and think about and have planned out before you get there. Because again, we were building some of this when we were well over 200 properties, and it gets a little hairy. So tackle that early on.
Mhm.
Well
Yeah.
said.
Yeah. I think you bring up a good point there, Brooke, which is a lot of people, I feel like don't start out with a partner in any shape, way, or form, whether it be a, husband-wife duo or just, business partner in some respect. Any feedback that you've seen from like other interviews that we've done or people that you've experienced that have like that partnership from the beginning? And do
Yeah,
those
well,
companies feel like have more success?
absolutely. I mean, those complementary skill sets are so important. I think there was another quote. It's like hire your weaknesses as soon as possible. So if you don't have a business partner like you all were lucky enough to do, like I said, Lance, I feel is all gas, no brakes, and Elaine is the people glue, and she's also the brake pedal. So
Yes.
combined, you all do make a dynamic duo. And I realized that it's taken me 4 startups to realize that I'm all gas. I'm like very similar to Lance. I'm all gas, no brake. But I need to complement myself,
Mhm.
surround myself with people that have that detail to kind of keep me out of jail.
Exactly.
So that's if you look at Randy, our COO. I mean, he's what's called an architect profile. So very anal, very does all the SOPs. I mean, Lance and I could never create an SOP. I don't think to save our lives, but
Still
we
learning
need
to
people
develop.
around us that do that stuff. So yeah, it's like I said, unfortunately it's taken me 4 startups to figure this out.
Well, I was thinking about this at the conference the other day. That old saying is so true. If you're the smartest person in the room, then you're in the wrong room.
I love that quote.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I've made that mistake, Brooke. I hired someone. My initial hire was like just like me. They were like a copy of me in some respect. And I'm like, yeah, do these things that I'm doing. But candidly, they weren't as good as me. I hate to say it, but they just weren't. And so I was like going back and constantly critiquing and like, well, that's not quite right. No, we got to do it this way, which led to certainly some headache. And had to learn that lesson as well, probably the hard way, as a lot of people do. Well, perhaps let's turn the page away from hiring and HR, kind of more into the operation side of the business. So maintenance, cleaning services. There was kind of a few that tied, I think, those threads together. So Lance, your 9th one comes to mind on our outline here. Not bringing services in-house soon enough. We began to bring cleaning in-house at around 75 properties. We had most of our eggs in our basket with one cleaning contractor. And then there were some issues perhaps during COVID. What was kind of your lesson there on the cleaning side? And then how do you properly bring people in-house for it to be successful?
So that goes back to that Lance having his foot on the gas. I wanted to grow and create other avenues of revenue, and I wanted to bring services in-house. But we had a great relationship with a local vendor who, in the spring of COVID, just said, you know what, I'm done. I'm not cleaning anymore. And we had 75 properties getting ready to open up, and we had no cleaners.
You're forgetting how urgent that situation was. It was actually Monday of Memorial Day weekend. It was Memorial Day.
Oh,
And she informed us that she was out. It was just freaking her out too much. And she walked the end of Memorial Day weekend.
And we got incredibly lucky to solve that. We had made an acquaintance that wanted to grow a cleaning company, and I was taking the trash down to the local transfer station, and I ran into the guy standing in front of a dumpster, and I said, "Hey, are you still trying to grow?" And he became our second cleaning vendor, but we immediately began to grow an in-house cleaning department because we couldn't stand to be in that situation again.
Well, and not only that, when you're using vendors, you have no control over the cleaning products. Legally, you cannot tell them what to use. We had a huge issue with them insisting on going to this house, which wasn't turning that day, and doing the 5 houses that were turning that day at 2:00 in the afternoon. And they wouldn't listen to us and take our direction. So bringing it in-house has just enabled us to control the whole situation and to do our own training. We flew Steve Craig in, if you know who he is. We had Steve come stay with us last year and train our cleaners and inspectors. It brings everything to a whole new level.
this came up a couple times. Where do you think is the right time to actually bring cleaning in house? Like, how many properties? Is it 10? Is it 100? Is it 300? Like, where do you think is the optimal amount where it actually makes sense?
If I had it to do all over again, I'm going to say somewhere between 20 and 40. We just that big mistake that we made was putting all of our eggs in one basket. We were literally using one cleaning vendor, and when it went sideways, it went way
Very
sideways.
And it also enables us to take better care of cleaners. When we were using cleaners that were working for other vendors, they were getting paid hourly and probably had little, if no benefits at all. And now our cleaners that are full time have access to healthcare and 401k and profit sharing and all sorts of things they never had before. And they're part of us. They also have that team spirit. They're part of us. They know they're part of us. They're part of our success. Actually, one of the biggest, most important pieces of the puzzle, I think you guys know. But I think it changes the experience for the cleaners as well.
Yeah. It is something you said there, Lance, about not having all your eggs in one basket.
Mm-hmm.
I remember previously when I was in mortgage banking, we would never use we were never stuck with the same lender all the time, and we never used the same title companies. We always had multiple, so we were always kind of playing them off each other. And you can kind of leverage that and obviously get better service. But, multiple people offer lots of money to be exclusive with them, but it wasn't worth the risk there.
Right.
Awesome. Well, the next one, Elaine, kind of going back your direction, was in your list, number 7, maintenance. So as you grow and hire more maintenance techs, before they're doing simple things, block batteries, smoke detectors, things like that. But no one gets, this was in your mistake. I thought this was worth reading for the listener. No one wants to get that call at midnight that the guests cannot get in or cannot sleep because there's beeping noises from smoke detectors. Sounds little, but can ruin a vacation. Certainly the experience.
And can I just tell you, we still deal with that. We still deal with that because we've grown quickly. We're really swamped right now. We're in the thick of doing breezeway safety inspections on all of our properties, and it still happens. We try to get ahead of it. Lance and I have stayed in 2 vacation rentals personally where the smoke detector went off at like 3:00 in the morning. So it just happens. It's hard to get, we're trying to get into that routine where just like, twice a year when the clocks changes kind of thing. But when you have 425 properties, it takes a little bit longer than that. So that's something we still struggle with. But yeah, I definitely recommend staying on top of that because it will go wrong. And if a guest is standing in the rain at 10:00 at night and they can't get in because the lock battery died, and then you have to call a team member who has to go out and go to, it's not fun for anybody.
It's a very rare occurrence now, but the just scale is an issue because, perfection is unattainable. And I don't know, we have somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000 smoke detectors in the inventory. So, something's going to go wrong.
Yeah. Even if the failure rate is 1 out of 1,000, that means every week, like one's going to fail basically.
Exactly.
Exactly.
And inevitably it's always at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning.
It never happens between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. when there's staff in the house. I mean, no, it's always in the middle of the night.
Yeah. No, I think there's some logic in that. Yeah, that's tough, which actually, Elaine, goes into number 9, which is kind of tying into your whole section here. Letting your cleaners and inspectors know how much they truly matter. So paying them well, treating them like family. You touched on a minute ago with respect to like offering them benefits, offering them services from a, human effort standpoint they didn't have before. What's kind of been your lesson there as you brought more in-house? Has it actually increased your costs significantly based on what you're doing to the contractor? Or what's kind of been your...
What do you think, Lance, in terms of bringing them in-house, in terms of increasing our costs?
So
I'm sure it has, but I think it's been well worth it.
Actually, there was a conversation at VRMA just this past week. Somebody else didn't like the idea of bringing cleaners in-house because of the payroll taxes involved. But when you're scheduling their work and you're telling them what products to use and you're giving them, that there's a real fine line there between 1099 contractor and employee, and this is the one area where Elaine has made me cautious, and I'm not willing to have that conversation with the Department of Labor. So we're bringing them in house. It gives us a little bit more control. It costs us a little bit more, but at the end of the day, we have more control over the quality, and that's benefited us.
Well, and not only that, we have more control over who is going into our homes because, when you're using a vendor, they take care of all of the hiring for their company. You have no idea if they're doing background checks. You really, at the end of the day, you don't know who from their company is going in and out of your home. I think we all know things go missing very, very rarely, but heaven forbid something happen and my owner say to me, who was in my house? And I can't tell them. But with our cleaners, they're vetted. We've done background checks. We've trained them. And I think it's a little better for the homeowners as well.
And our overall review scores have gone up.
They have. Our cleaning scores have gone up considerably since we brought it in-house.
I was going to say you have more control in that. Therefore, it's going to be better for owner recruitment. You can kind of highlight that, hey, this is a differentiator for us. And you can highlight what you just said right there. The fact that we do know who is going in and out. We've done background checks. If you hire these other companies potentially that, maybe use outsourced cleaners, you don't necessarily know who's going to be in there. And that might be another little, tidbit.
Exactly. And we've started working recently. With Amber Hurdle and Employer Brand Central, and she's helping us put together some processes. And we're doing some really cool things that involve the cleaners as well. For instance, one of our best cleaners last week, Lexi, had 3 homeowners reach out just to say their house has never been that clean. They were absolutely thrilled. So I was able to reach out to Lexi immediately, and I gave her a gift card. We made a big deal out of it. She was the rock star of the week, and she was thrilled. She was absolutely thrilled. And the other cleaners see that as well and want to strive for that and want that kind of recognition. So it's a trickle down effect.
Yeah, I love that one. Brooke was mentioning differentiation there. Let's go toward the marketing direction. My favorite topic. So Lance, number 4, this was in your mistake list. Bought a camera, one of the best purchases that I ever made. Elaine said it wouldn't work, so you get a little bit of a "I told you so" moment here. I think she.
Oh, you
I
bet.
told
He still
earlier,
hears that. I laughed at him.
Yeah. What was kind of the journey here from you buying a camera to hiring a professional photographer?
Well,
it was a really, really quick story because I bought a camera. I did one set of photos. They were absolutely horrible. I'm 6'4", and Elaine said all I did was take pictures of the ceiling.
It was ridiculous.
Now this is in modern times, professional photography is table stakes, but when you're going back to 2015, it was just beginning to show up, and we had already been introduced to a photographer. We had
no money. We were just starting.
I mean, we were just starting out.
It was a struggle.
It was the shoestrings of the bootstrap. Yeah. And anyway, I called him up. He gave me a price. I choked and I gagged on it, and I said, "Okay, go do it." It was the best thing we ever did because he sent us a file in Dropbox with our digital photos and a link to a 3D Matterport tour. And we posted that on our Facebook page, and we upended the entire real estate market locally.
Seriously. Vacation rental market.
Turns out nobody else was in the entire market was doing professional photography. And we captured 30 to 35% of the real estate market in our community in that summer.
It was mind blowing.
And it really poured the rocket fuel on the growth engine.
And I'm really proud to say that we actually helped raise the bar for the entire industry, both on the vacation rental side and the real estate side. There's still a few realtors here that, pull out the cell phone and, you look at the listings, and you're just not doing your clients a good service if you do it that way.
Yeah. Lance, you nailed it, right? You said it's table stakes now, but like when I launched Vantage, you're absolutely right. Nobody had professional photography in Ocean City, not one person.
Right.
And we hired, you remember Stephen Cherry? We hired Stephen Cherry to photo all the properties. And I don't know how, I just must have got him at a weak point or something, but I got him to do all of our properties for like virtually nothing.
I know.
And this guy is like the best photographer. He did all the magazines down there. He is incredible. And it was one of those things that really, I think, was probably one of the catalysts for why we grew so quickly. Because if you went to our website, every property we had, even the dogs, looked incredible.
Yeah.
Because he made them look so good. Unfortunately, it made them look too good sometimes.
That can be a problem sometimes, right?
Where the guests would check in, they're like, wait, this isn't the property I saw.
Right.
But that was our differentiator. And I think from there on, we were a rocket ship. But I'm glad to see that you all did the same thing down there in Chincoteague.
Yeah. It sounds like you got a good one too. One conversation I had recently with a client, Elaine, I was saying, well, it was a very large, very high-end property. I'm like, why not just hire 2 photographers? Like, this is one of your most important marketing assets. Why not hire photographer A, send them in on Tuesday, hire photographer B, send them in on Wednesday. And what you may find, I have a client that's done this consistently across a few homes, is that you use a little bit of set A, a little bit of set B to put the final gallery together. And I'm like, this is too valuable of an asset just to, do it away quickly. Now, sometimes you get a rock star, so to speak, with regards to a photographer, and you don't maybe need to question it. But some photographers may just see things a little bit different. They have a different eye, they have a different look, the drone stuff, different technologies, and so on and so forth. So
absolutely. And photography is not inexpensive, but and I've learned that it really depends on your market, because we have a mutual friend that works in an extremely high-end mountain market. And he was telling me about his photo shoots. And I was like, yeah, sometimes I'll just roll the dice. It's $300 or $400. He's like, huh? Like, my photo shoots are 5,000 plus. So
I know
it's market specific depending on what you're doing.
Sure.
Yeah. In this case, it was kind of like he was choosing between 2 $1,000 photographers. I'm like, just hire both. Like, like you probably use those photos for years. If you look at the cost, like per month or per year, or whatever, it really wasn't a significant thing. And he was like, oh, I didn't even think about that. Like, why couldn't we do that? And I said, you can. So it was a fun conversation just to like bend his brain a little bit. Yeah, go
On
ahead.
that, real quick, Conrad, one thing we also did, which was really helpful, was we actually hired this photographer, Stephen Cherry, to do more lifestyle pictures. So we did pictures like and I think Elaine and Lance know this, but we when we first started Vantage, we were going after everything. We were going after every single property possible. Then we realized, we're like, you know what? Like, most of our revenue was coming from 3 or 4 or 5 different buildings. It was Belmont Towers, Meridian, Sunset Island, Gateway Grand. We said, you know what? Let's focus on those buildings, those 4 or 5 buildings. And we would hire Steven. He would go out. I spent him for an entire day to go out to Sunset Island and just take pictures. And we used that pictures. We used those marketing. We created microsites for every one of those, buildings, every one of those communities. And that was really another growth catalyst is, when you ended up getting that, those great photography in those communities. And it seemed like you were almost like the de facto management company for those communities because you had so many great pictures and you could do it. And I mean, we used those for years and years to come. It was well worth the investment to, send him out there for the day.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I've made this joke before, Brooke, on onboarding calls where I'm like, clients will say, hey, can I send you some of my photos? And I'm like, this will be my 8th year doing this coming up here next year. I've never had a client send me too much stuff yet. So if you're the first client, I will, send you a fruit basket or something. But like if a client ever sends me too many photos or too many videos or too many marketing assets, I'll gladly complain, but it hasn't happened yet. So it's always going to help the marketing, I think, go more efficiently in my experience. Your note on marketing, Elaine, here was your second one. Waiting too long to hiring marketing help and trying to do it all myself. We grew our business from day one with social media. We had no money, so that helped. But there was many other things that you could have done. Eventually, you found a way to outsource that effectively. What's kind of been your journey with marketing with external marketing people as well?
Yeah, that was my area of being a complete and utter control freak about our brand. And the smartest thing we did was to grow our reputation on social. It was free and it gave us this incredible foundation wherein we were accepted by the community and the locals. We grew everything there, but there were so many other things that I could have been doing, and there were only so many hours in the day, and already we were working 7 days a week, it seemed, and it took me a while to find the right marketing person. The gut feeling thing, had somebody come in, didn't work out, kept her too long. And finally, Tim in my office, my mini me, as I like to joke, because he knows how to speak in my voice. But it took me years to find him. And it's a little bit of both. Tim and I do marketing in-house, plus we use ICND and a few other things. But there's until you really delve in, Conrad, you of all people, I follow you. There's so many things you need to be doing. And again, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're not in the right room. So you need to ask for help.
Yeah, we just actually did a session on this at VRMA on Tuesday afternoon, talking about SEO, and we joined forces with ICND in the spring of 2019, and we actually had a chart up of our website traffic from 2016 to present. And there was a little dip in April of 2019. I was like, oh, that's when we launched our new site with ICND. I don't know. I think with one company or another, Conrad, you even did some SEO work for us way back in the day.
Yeah, way back.
But that's one thing where is hiring somebody to do SEO work for you expensive, or is it priceless? And that's been a huge part of our growth, is knowing we've gotten lucky a few times in investing in areas where it's been priceless. It's not been expensive.
Well, and a perfect example is on this chart they showed us the other day. There was a big dip just recently. And that was this whole update that Google did with the unhelpful words. Conrad, I'm sure you know exactly what I'm talking about. But I would never have known that. They're on top of it. They're taking care of it. But how would I know that?
Right.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, my last statement that summarized the entire session, and I think it worked out well because we ended up with virtually no questions. It's our job to develop great, original, authoritative content, write great content, and then hand it off to the SEO people to put in all the structure behind it, because I have no idea what that looks like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and you know what? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
It takes time. No. You're good, Elaine.
If I were starting out today in this age of AI being everywhere, I could see it being super tempting to use that for everything, just to get content out there. And that would be such a huge mistake because it has to be authentic. It has to be in your voice, your words. Even if you use it to kind of get your creative juices going, that's one thing. But then you need to tweak it and make it your own. And I could just see a lot of people starting out who don't know that, just jumping right in. Oh, that sounds great. Let me put it up there. And while they won't be penalized for it, they're certainly not going to rank for it.
It's so obvious. There's so many chat GPT fingerprints all over it. You can see it online all the time. You're like, that was like literally sometimes they didn't even like reformat it. The little asterisk is still in there. You know what I mean? It's like, come on, like take a little bit of time, One thing you said, Elaine, though, about, not having money in the early days, so you had to do the marketing yourself, and social was really, helpful. A lot of people have had that same strategy. Look, you got to be scrappy. You got to be efficient in the beginning, And it reminds me of Ginger and Hunter Harrelson, with beach ball properties. They didn't have any money when they started. They get their first 200 properties. They've said multiple times on stage. It's like they got that literally from social media. They set up these Facebook groups. What's happening in Orange Beach, what's happening in Gulf Shores. They have 85,000 and 55,000 members.
We've had many conversations with them about this, and it's really cool because we've followed very similar paths and done a lot of things very much alike. And I love that about them. But yeah, we did the same thing. That's where we gained our credibility with guests and owners and the community. And it was a game changer. And our social still remains ridiculously strong, to the point, like when we get our report each month, Nathan's like, I don't know what you guys are doing, but keep it up because I've never seen social this strong before. So it's great.
Yeah, Ginger texted me a couple days ago. She literally said, look at this. Like someone posted on there, hey, I need a new property manager for my property. And 8 of her owners said, beach ball, beach ball, beach ball, beach ball. And that is the ultimate social.
We have that happen all the time. And that is marketing that it's completely priceless. You cannot pay for that. When your guests and your owners are your biggest fans, that's all you need.
Social proof.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The only thing I'll call out, I agreed with a lot of what you guys said there for sure. I thought the way that you measured it, Lance, was interesting. You said years. You were talking about, we started some of this work back here, and then we're talking about it and showing the traffic effects today. I think a lot of people have this idea in their mind that it's going to be a 2-month process, that we're going to go from step 1 to step 15 in such a short period of time. And I think listening to someone like you who's gone through this journey, it's like it took some time to get there. The one thing I always say, though, I did a LinkedIn post the other day to this effect, is that you can see progress along the way. Even if you can't see all the clicks, for example, in Google coming, you can see the impressions climbing if you're doing the right stuff.
Absolutely.
Like, we're on page 1, we're at the bottom, so that kind of thing. So
absolutely.
SEO is a 15-minute a day slog for the rest of your life.
Yes.
You can never stop doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. And to be honest with you, Lance, that does happen from time to time. We go into a market and we see that the top, dog, so to speak, has been not doing much. And then we can actually make really quick progress,
they become complacent.
Google wants new helpful content. And if you're static and you're just sitting there, then people are passing you by.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We've been able to do it once or twice, which is, a little fun, obviously, for us to take down the big dog, so to speak, in a year.
Every day.
And take them out. Well, we talked about growth. Let's kind of tie that into the next section, which is really about growth and community, because I think both things were important. Elaine, you just touched on community. Maybe we go there. You mentioned it in the social context, but there's more than just posting on Facebook and Instagram and things like that. There's actually getting involved in the community. So this is your 8th point, just for the reader, if they want to go back to the book and check that out. Show that your community, that you're not just there to make money, but that you care. You're there for the good times. You're there for the bad times. What's been some of your favorite community things that you've done?
Absolutely. I think that is so incredibly important. And again, it has to be authentic. You have to not just talk the talk, you have to walk the walk. We volunteer all over the island, pretty much everything, any event that comes up, you can find someone on our team or multiple people on our team from. We allow our staff to do charitable work on the clock. We don't make them take a day off. Anything they want to do to support the community. Tim has gone and read to kids at the elementary school. We encourage them to do it on the clock and give back. I sit on the board of directors for the Chamber of Commerce, as well as Historic Main Street Merchants. Lance is the president for our Eastern Shore Association of Realtors. This came up a lot at the conference this week. If you're not at the table, then you're on the menu. So you want to have your hands in everything. And I try to say yes to absolutely everything. A donation for the prom after party, the Little League team, anything, because even the little things like that add up, and people remember it. They remember it if something is going on Facebook, or if they're cutting a lawn and somebody says, do you know a good property manager? It all trickles back. You take care of people and they take care of you as well. But it takes heart. You have to be genuine and you have to mean it.
Expanding on what Elaine just said, and you're going to see this in a lot of other markets, because the locals, a lot of times you don't think of the locals when you think about vacation rentals, but with regulation always on the horizon, the locals know who's in it for the community and who's in it for the dollar. And that's kind of helped our growth, because we've gotten a lot of recommendations from locals who see that we're authentic about what we're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that makes the most sense, is like people see you doing it the right way too, ultimately. And then when you do show up to that city council meeting that will inevitably occur, it's not a question of when, it's always a question, or if it's always a question of when, that sort of thing. Then you're like, well, these guys do XYZ. And so I believe that if we put this noise ordinance in place, they will communicate to their guests what the noise ordinance actually means, that sort of thing.
Absolutely.
Whereas if you're parachuting from out of town, they just don't have the same kind of trust, do they?
Well, and the locals have family come to visit. They have, people come to them for recommendations, and they come to us. We're really blown away sometimes when a local comes to us who's born and raised on the island, been there forever. We're not originally from there. There's a few companies on the island that have been in existence 25 years plus, and they come to us, for a reason, and that means everything.
100%.
Yeah, I think Mike Harrington actually agreed with you all. I don't know if you read that. And Mike Harrington, obviously very successful, been in this industry for a while, but he talked about that. It was one of his mistakes as well. Just his thing was not being visible enough in the community. A lot of the successful managers, he said, a lot of the most successful managers I know are very active and visible within the communities they serve. If I had to do it all over again, I'd participate more on the local level boards, nonprofits, and organizations. A lot of trust and goodwill is built through those local stakeholders.
Completely agree.
One of our mentors.
Yeah, absolutely. When during the shutdown, when money was tight for absolutely everyone, there were a couple of organizations on the island that needed some repairs, and they didn't really have money to do it. Our local chamber was one of them. We had a full-time maintenance person. We were trying to keep working, so we donated his time and talent to doing all the repairs at no cost. They just had to buy the materials. So I don't think they ever forgot that.
That's great.
I love that. There's a few other things then that tie into the growth side of things. Lance, maybe I'll go back your direction. Your first mistake that you listed was overstaffing in business development. Vacation rentals are truly focused around relationships. 90% of the growth came from the right people with the right relationships. Could you expand on that piece?
Yeah, I had a CEO.
That's back in Vantage. You clarify. Yes. That's back in Vantage days. Yeah.
Back in the old days, had a CEO that was all about growth. And it was like, we need 200 units. How many business development people do we need to hire to get 200 units? And it was incredibly inefficient, because realistically, our real estate referrals and our top 2 or maybe 3 agents brought in 90% of the business. I might have had at one point another 10 business development agents that were struggling to close deals, because the people who were listing properties for rent were going for those trusted sources, And Brooke will know that it was Denny Murphy, and it was Kirsten, and it was Sandy, and it was Chris Jett and Terry Riley, and we really could have grown infinitely with just a handful of those people, and the extras were just extraneous noise and a little bit of a time suck for management.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I feel like, Brooke, maybe the lesson here is like linear output. You can't always just add more people to the equation and get the same output. Sometimes there's like a cutting off sort of thing that happens.
Yeah, I think there's probably like a point of diminishing returns. When you get there, I mean, there's only so many properties out there, and there's but a lot of times it does come down to those relationships. Obviously we were doing tons of direct mail, but just slapping on additional salespeople doesn't necessarily immediately correlate to more inventory.
Yeah, and the best, for anything that I've done in this realm, referral traffic has always been by far the best. Mm-hmm. I mean, yes, our postcards have been great, but the reason, one of the reasons that we've had such success in signing the numbers of clients that we have had over the years is because we did a good job. Yeah. And once a company gets to the point where they're no longer focused 100% on just doing a good job, it becomes incredibly difficult to sign more clients.
That's always whenever I usually do a presentation of ERMA, and it's like, 10 lessons learned or 7 lessons learned on growing your inventory. The bonus one is always like, hey, build a great freaking company. That is the best owner acquisition strategy you
It
can
is.
Absolutely. And as far as business development, Lance and I are business development for Chincoteague, and Dorothy and Jason are business development for Ocean City. I think I mentioned to you before we started, by the time we get through the day tomorrow, we'll have done 6 meetings with potential new homeowners, and we still do them together. And that, that's what people are looking for. They want to hear that we built this from the ground up and that we're still very hands-on, and this is not going to be the last time they see us. I really don't want anyone just randomly going in there and trying to sell them on our business like they're selling a car, because we built this with heart and soul, and that's the way we're going to sell it, so we can pick the right owners and the right properties.
I'm curious, what's your close ratio? When you meet with owners, if you meet with 10 owners, how many of those are you going to sign up?
9. Easily. I would say even like 9.5. It's pretty rare that if we get the meeting, we don't get the property.
As many as we want.
So it's really interesting. Yeah, it's really interesting. This happened last year. We had a home sell. It was one of our rentals, and it sold. And we met with the buyers before they bought it. They didn't like our numbers. We're very realistic about our projections. They thought they could do better. So they went with our competitor, who we found out undercut us on commission as well. They're back with us now. And they said, well, your commission rate was a little bit higher, but they nickeled and dimed us. And I ended up spending far more with them. And there was no professional photography, and they didn't make the numbers they want. They still came in wanting a little bit high, but we were very realistic, and we worked together and figured it out. And we had a good long talk before we took them back. And, so they did see the light, but that's pretty rare that happens.
Well, and right now, Brooke, circling back to your bonus tip, build a great company. We're in a very fortunate position, because this year we can walk into a client appointment and we say, look, we've been chosen to be part of the 100 collection, and we were voted VRMA Property Management Company of the Year. Just sign here.
Yeah. Those are some good. We talk about trust icons and trust signals.
Yes.
Those are some good trust icons.
Yeah.
I've changed my tune on that a little bit, Elaine. I used to hear that feedback sometimes, through our clients, right? The homeowner's pushing them, the homeowner wants more revenue. I used to see it as, they have unrealistic expectations. Now, depending on the owner, they may be completely open and willing to make improvements or investments into marketing their properties. So I've kind of changed my own tune on that a little bit, where I say, well, why don't we do a dedicated Facebook ad just for this one unit, and the owner can fund it. So if he wants extra visibility, he wants extra, marketing eyes just on his listing or her listing, whatever the case may be. I've kind of changed my tune a little bit on that, and changed in my approach to it, to now where they may say, well, at least we're giving them an option, instead of just saying like, well, it does what it does. We're giving them extra flexibility. And they may not say, hey, I'm willing to invest a little bit in the property to add new features or add things to make it more appealing.
That's a very good point, Conrad.
If it's going to drive more, as opposed to just like, well, that is what it is, which I feel like is sometimes what some of my clients
right. And that's why I love these conversations, because we are all constantly learning from each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. Awesome. Yeah. Well, I know we're coming up against the time here, guys, and we did not get through everything, Brooke. So I don't know if we want to pick 1 or 2 things out here that maybe we can get to. Obviously, with 20 mistakes and great guests like this, we may not be able to get through everything. But the last thing was about like taking on the wrong owners or pruning, which we kind of touched on throughout the throughout the last hour or so. But maybe if you guys wanted to say anything on that, we talked about the fact that you are in this great position now to take on the right owners. How do you know when it is time to move on from an owner?
Oh,
maybe,
heck yes. And I'm so glad we're not skipping this one, because this is so tremendously important. In the early days, we, like you said, Brooke, you just want properties. You take everything you can get, even if it's not the best, even if the owner's a little bit difficult. Again, that gut feeling, during that initial meeting with the owners, if we feel they're going to be a problem or constantly tell us how to do our job, or just be a difficult client, we're not going to click. We're going to listen to our gut feeling about that now. I heard a lot of people talk about a jerk policy, and I heard someone else say, if I'm not willing to sit down and have brunch with you, then I probably shouldn't sign you. So you really have to think about all of those things. I've had a couple of owners that we've had since early on that really have given us a run for our money. And fortunately, I've been able to coach them and work with them and get them to back off a little bit. We've let a couple of people go because of that. and become a lot more particular with the properties. We've learned that the ones that are draining our us and our team of their time and their spirit, and you're answering negative reviews and you're giving money back, they're not worth it. Quickly, in my comment in the book at that time, I mentioned the very first property and how it's now 10 years older. They're not with us this year. They're not with us because, we did the Breezeway safety certification program. I made sure we did a safety inspection of their home. There were some glaring issues that I had brought up to them repeatedly, and they ignored me. Finally, I was in the position to back it up and say, look, this is what needs to be done. If you don't do it, we're not going to be able to manage your house this year. They didn't do the things, and our competitors scooped them right up, which is scary to me. Because the house really does need some work, but they're not my problem anymore. And I did, they're good people. I tried to work with them. I tried to save the relationship if they were willing to do the work and put the time and money into the home, but they weren't. So bye-bye.
Yeah. And one other lesson that we didn't put in the book, but each property manager is going to learn how to go about firing an owner at some point in time. And it can be difficult. And our very first owner that we fired was at the time our top grossing property. And she had some, there were just some personality issues that we couldn't get along with. And we looked at each other and we were like, are we really going to do this? And she was like, well, can we afford to fire her, or can we afford not to fire her? And it ended up being the right thing to do.
Absolutely.
And how refreshing was it, though? How refreshing for your team? I'm sure your team all kind of came in. I remember that. We had literally our team members would come in and they would dread it the entire day dealing with that person, and they knew they had to have that conversation. Like, that is not a way to work. Where it's like 1% of your owners are causing 90% of the headaches of that employee and that team. And, and we know how precious our teammates are. It's not worth leaving somebody for.
And how much money is that costing you at the end of the day as well? If you're putting this much time into, a sort of a subpar property or an owner that's not real cooperative. We've also started asking our team at the end of the year, tell me which home do you wish at the end of the season we did not have last year? Which owner do you wish that we did not have? So, when you continue to let your team be beaten up by these people and these homes, you're making them feel like you don't care, and it's really bad for morale.
Yeah. I learned, Brooke, recently we fired a client, which we don't make a habit of. I can count it on two hands at this point, maybe the number of clients I fired in 7 years. But I learned my team member had a celebratory dinner after I fired this client because she was so unhappy dealing with this person every day, which I didn't know exactly how bad it was. And then when she said that to me, I'm like, well, I paid for the dinner, and I'm like, I'm sorry.
I was going to say, you should have picked up the tab for that one.
I did. I sent her the reimbursement through our payroll system, and I'm like, tell me what it was. I'll reimburse it for you. It won't happen again. And he's gone.
And I agree. We don't take it lightly when we have to let someone go. And I think we're about like that as well, probably, less than 10. And now we just try really hard to get it right the first time so that doesn't have to happen.
100%.
Conrad, would you like to admit which management company this was that you fired?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Zero chance. Maybe after we stop hitting record, I'll tell you. But no, all good. I know we're at time here, guys, so we'll end on a funny note there maybe. And I don't know, maybe, Brooke, this could be a two-parter if we wanted to bring them back. That's right. Thanks so much, guys.
No, this was great. Thank you guys so much for having us and for having us in this most awesome book that I love. And there's a wealth of knowledge in here, and it really doesn't matter how long you've been in the business. It's the whole reason we go to conferences and everything. We learn from each other every single day.
Yeah.
100%. Awesome. Well, excellent, Brooke. We'll hit the button here to record. If you liked hearing from the Stitchers today, then you've got to go ahead and do one thing for us, which is you got to go to your podcast app of choice, Spotify, iTunes, or where we get the most listens. Leave 5 stars for the 5-star experience that these lovely folks provided to you as our guest today. So thanks so much, and we'll catch you on the next episode.